Good evening, Simran.
Good evening.
Would you introduce your name and occupation?
Of course I would. My name is SIMRAN, and I am a prenatal yoga teacher, a doula, and a PhD candidate in pre and perinatal psychology.
Wonderful. And would you share with us what happened along the history and when and how did the woman lose the power of giving a natural birth?
I think the main point in our history is really World War II. That was when the big shift occurred. Because it's on a number of levels. One, women started birthing in hospitals at higher rates. And what happened is that's when we started inviting the secrecy into birth. Because what happened before that period of time is when you had a baby, all the women in the neighborhood would come and help you birth your baby. And so by time a woman was 18 years old, she had been to 10 or 12 births in the neighborhood. So there was no mystery around the event. She'd be in the middle of her own labor and she'd go, "Oh yes, this was like my neighbor Joan's birth. I remember now." So that took away so many women's fears. But what happened after World War II is women started going to the hospital and they went by themselves behind closed doors. And so we lost the art of what birth was like. We lost the opportunity to birth. And I really believe that that's a huge symptom of our problem today, is still young women today don't understand the process. They see it on Hollywood movies where women are screaming and hollering and yelling, or they see it on reality birth television where they're filming sequences that are frightening and scary, so people stop when they're watching and it's shock value. To the extent that most people don't believe documentaries anymore when they see them about how to birth in non-violent, peaceful, natural ways.
Wonderful. Would you give us the differences or the view of having a natural birth versus a C-sections or operational birth?
I believe that every child has its own birth destiny. So for me to lay claims of a judgment about a baby or a woman choosing to have a vaginal or vaginal birth or cesarean birth is really a challenging point. The question I'd be asking is that woman in her power when she makes that decision? Is she making it from an empowered place, or is she doing it out of fear or out of social or cultural pressures? That's the difference. The woman who sits before me and says, "I have been meditating throughout my pregnancy and I believe it is my destiny, my child's destiny, that we experience C-section together," that's a woman who's in her power. And who am I or anybody else to disrespect that? And I look at the people who are advocates for natural birth need to respect that. As much as we have challenges with people who say you have to have a C-section and use scare tactics to force women into that position. So I look, until the natural birth movement respects and honors a woman's right to choose to have an elective C-section, we're no different than the medical providers who are forcing women into positions of disempowerment.
So as long as a woman have the power and have the consciousness of what she's experiencing, then, and it's her choice, then it's the correct way to have it, versus if she do without her power and her consciousness, then that will affect the experience of giving birth.
Yes, that is my
Do
belief.
you think birth will affect, conscious birth will affect on the global level?
Well, first initiation to its culture, to its society. And what we have found is that we have had generations of children that were born in violence. And that creates an imprint of your relationship to the world. How you see your social condition, your culture, and your people is framed in that moment. That's a blueprint. So the intention really with conscious birthing is to create a space of love. That's what that oxytocin is in a natural birth scenario. It's teaching the possibility of unconditional love. And that's what we're losing at higher rates with medicated birth. Because women could possibly, in the future, lose their possibility to produce oxytocin because we keep having medicated births. So they don't know how to do it anymore. So we lose our foundation, our understanding of what it is to love.
And as a Kundalini yoga instructor, what is a conscious pregnancy through a yogic's point of view?
I really think it comes down to being mindful and doing your best, eating as healthfully as possible, rest, connecting to your baby regularly, making sure that you are true to yourself. And what I mean by that is finding a medical provider, albeit a midwife or a doctor, who thinks about birth the way that you think about birth. So that you can walk into that birth without fear. In your power and your strength. And in that moment, allow your baby to come through in the manner that meets its destiny. Instead of you trying to affect that child's entrance onto the earth plane. And it needs to be honored as a sacred event. Birth is no different than death. It's simply the reverse process. And just as we have as much respect and reverence for leaving this earth plane, we need to have as much respect for the entrance onto this earth.
And I remember Yogi Bhajan saying that having a child, giving birth, is a sacred thing, and a woman needs to acknowledge that to bring a happier being onto the earth. So, is there any other recommendation for women out there, or advice?
It's about community. The age-old concept of that it takes a village to raise a child is very, very true. And I believe that we will start to shift the way women birth on this planet when women start supporting each other through their pregnancy. Because we've tried in the past to shift the birth movement from the top down. What do I mean by that? Is changing the way hospitals organize their labor and delivery by introduction of midwives and birth centers, and that's been very slow. But if women start supporting each other on a grassroots movement, start saying no to a lot of medical interventions, and seeking out the practitioners that support, that are advocates for the natural birth movement, you will see things change very, very quickly. Because what got us here is economics. And what can get us out of this condition is, again, economics. But women have to be in their power, because what happens is women go to people and they're frightened by them, what they hear, and they're afraid to look right or left because they're like deer in the headlights. They're frozen in their fear, and they're giving away their power and control to these other people instead of owning that power and their trust in themselves and their belief in themselves and the belief on the foundational level that their bodies can birth a baby.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
SIMRAN.